podcast. But before we really get into it, Anne, I kind of want you to do just like a brief introduction of who you are so everyone can get to know you a little better.
Sure, yeah. I'm Ann Krupke. I'm a senior product marketing manager for Dynamics 365 ERP at Microsoft. I have spent my whole career with Dynamics. I started as a functional consultant out of college in the partner channel doing supply chain and manufacturing implementations. I've done a little bit of everything from pre-sales and engagement management. I joined Microsoft in 2021 as a fast track solution architect, and then I've been in product marketing for about 2 years. So I'm dangerous on many fronts. And now I do a lot of work day in, day out launching our newest AI capabilities. So it's kind of the bread and butter that I work with now.
Yeah,
Fun
it
place to
sounds
be
like you.
working.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you have an abundance of experience under your belt, which I'm really excited to have you on today and get to talk to you and pick your brain about a couple of topics specifically within AI as we're closing out this season. I really wanted to dive in today about like AI ethics and governance and things like that, and kind of what your thoughts are around that kind of subject. So yeah, just kind of starting off, in your opinion, what does like responsible AI, specifically in like D365, look like to you a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key elements that I think about in terms of responsible AI, especially in ERP. Um, First and foremost, I think there's the user aspect. Like every person, regardless of whether it's ERP or anywhere, is using AI needs to be able to trust it, kind of period, right? So when we built out our rounds of agents and Copilot in Dynamics, we focused a lot on transparency. What is an agent doing? Enabling, right, permission. So I know what an agent is allowed to do. I know what it's supposed to be doing, and then that visibility into what it's actually done and the ability to coach and like I won't say training because training means something specific when it comes to LLMs, but tune, right? Tune the performance of an agent based on what you expect it to do. Um, and then when you think about ERP specifically and the fact that it's a financial system and that's a thing that needs to be audited, it adds this kind of whole additional layer. And I think, when you think about good accounting principles, there's repeatability, transparency is there as well. So the same things that, users need to apply, but repeatability and that control that, to minimize financial liability. So it means that you can't just bring AI in and just let it go nuts on your ERP. You really have to say, it's allowed to do this. This is where it can add value, and this is how we're going to control it. And to actually give an example, we have the account reconciliation agent, which reconciles the general ledger and the sub ledger, and it recommends resolutions to discrepancies between the two. So we don't just plug in your financial data to an LLM and say, come up with a result, right? We can't do that. So what we do instead is we have a combination of hard code and firm boundaries, and then we bring in AI to do the things it's good at, which is mapping unstructured data to categories or learning from previous interactions. What are you most likely to do in this context? Okay, well, I'll just recommend it to you to speed things up going forward. So to kind of sum it up, it's that you can't just plop AI into a situation. You have to make sure you're putting controls in, you have to make sure you're providing visibility, and you have to make sure that people are always in the loop. And that's kind of the principles we've taken as we've developed agents inside ERP.
So key for me in that is just to kind of follow up with you and ask if this is true or what you think about this. The word trust really is, in my opinion, not being afraid to move forward. It's not trust everything it does, but trust is that, hey, you've got to be moving forward with AI right now. You've got to be implementing it, figuring out how it fits in your organization, get people working on it in your organization to see how it connects and in these boundaries. But sitting back on the sidelines saying I just don't trust AI at all. That's that trust is really the starting point of just getting started. And then within that, there's still, like you said, the boundaries of you can't just trust everything. You've got to question where you feel it's question and make sure it's working for you.
Yeah, I think of it as sort of an equation, right? Like the value that the agent gives you has to be more than your concern about what could go wrong if it's failing.
Hmm.
Like take planning, right? Master planning. If I buy too much inventory and we can't sell it, especially if it's like expiring inventory that you might have to scrap, that is money, right? Or if I don't buy enough inventory and we don't get the sale, that's money I missed out on. So it's like when we think about what we're building, what we're allowing AI to do, we have to think about what's the implication if it gets it wrong.
Mm.
And a lot of times it's money, it's liability, and it's things that could hurt your business. So trust, I think, is this equation of how do we give you enough value and oversight to know that the liability of what could possibly go wrong is mitigated, all right, or you feel comfortable taking that risk. And I think so it's not just I can understand why people are hesitant to maybe embark on that journey, and that's where I think you have to we as we've built out agents and Copilot capabilities, it's been all about, all right, what is the value we're providing and what could happen if we go wrong? How do we prevent it from happening?
Yep.
For sure.
That's a good follow-up. I love that further definition for organizations like in that mode. Like a lot of organizations are plowing forward, but you can't plow so fast that you're going to do what you said, which is, create an issue that could tank your business or tank a quarter or whatever. But you can't sit back idly for another year at this point. You should be engaging somehow to understand how it works.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd like to remind people. Actually, somebody said this to me at Ignite last year. Every time we have an AI output, we have that disclaimer at the bottom, like warning, generative AI may give you answers that are incorrect. And somebody, they saw that, they looked at me and they said, every spreadsheet ever built by a person should have that same exact flag, right? Like all it takes is, there was some big company, I don't remember. I saw a story in the news in the past couple of months that basically said some company had a big miss on their financial earnings and they tracked it all back to like a spreadsheet where somebody had just they had a
Yeah.
circular reference or they misaccount like they added the wrong two cells together. And it's like, yeah, or the jokes about the intern that sent out that email that they weren't supposed to. Like it's
Right.
and we're not saying pull people out of the equation, right, either. It's all about how do you implement the right checks and balances in your business processes, whether it's agents or people, to make sure that errors don't go out the door or cause that
It's
bigger
it's kind of
impact.
like people are got you here and IA's got you here, but together you're up here because it's not like one or the other. Because I've said this too. It's interesting that you've mentioned that a person could be just as wrong. If you got one person in your organization that you trust and you're saying, hey, well, we always go to Bill or Jane for this answer, but they could be wrong. And it could
Mhm.
make it could be a major mistake that if you don't have, so you're really ultimately you probably have checks and balances around people too. So AI is no different. So why would you add that layer of distrust of like, well, it's AI, it could be wrong. Yeah, but people could be wrong too, and it's good to
Yeah,
get them
I
both
think
in
that's
there.
where you like. I think it is different though. I think that people and AI aren't the same. You can ask a person to explain their reasoning to you, and they can tell you, right?
Mm,
AI, to a certain extent, can be a black box, and you can tell it to explain it to you its reasoning, but the way that AI thinks isn't like a person. So
sure.
I actually think it's okay to be skeptical or conservative when it comes to AI implementations because I think that's how you're going to get the most like practical, useful outputs. Um, so I don't know, like that's where I land. I land on
Yeah.
being a healthy skeptic. Like I don't think we just blindly go, oh, AI can fix stuff, and like people can be wrong too. So it doesn't matter. It does matter, right? And
Yeah.
we need to do our due diligence and we need to prep, but I also don't think it's as extreme as the picture can be painted to be. Just like we were saying, people can be wrong too.
Yep.
Mhm.
Measured optimism and healthy skepticism. I love it.
Yeah, I like what you said about checks and balances. Like, there should be that implemented in every business, no matter what you're doing, as something as simple as like sending out an email. Yeah, if it's something that I had, I actually had a doctor send out an email to everyone in their system, and they were supposed to BCC everyone, but they just CC'd. And so they had to like send out another email being like, I'm so sorry, like this was our intern or something, like someone made a mistake. So yeah, things like that even need to have checks and balances. And yeah, that's with AI as well, like you guys were saying. So
Yeah.
um, where do you see that like balance? Like, where do you think that automation is more helpful versus where like human judgment is essential in like in these kind of situations a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's where you come back to the what could possibly go wrong. And if it's, well, we could lose millions of dollars, I would say you want people in that equation, right? And it's sort of it's like a person to person or organization to organization risk assessment. So what is this process? How likely is it to go off the rails? How big of an outcome would an edge case failing have? And I think you can sort of build a framework for your personal risk tolerance on where agents can handle things and where people can. Um, and actually, I'll give you an example of where we picked something specifically in design to go a certain way. So we have the activity approvals agents in project operations. And essentially what it does is it looks at your policy documentation and it reviews time and expense entries in project ops and flags things that may be out of policy. So you might have booked something to a billable code that has details that look like they should be non-billable or something like that, right? Um, and we didn't say, okay, this agent will look at the document, look at the entries, and just mark things as approved. It actually marks things as ready for approval or detected a violation. And it's still up to a project manager to go in and review each one of those and then accept them. So we looked at what could go wrong if an agent accepted a time or expense entry without a person in the loop and we just invoiced a client. And essentially that combination of like potentially losing revenue or liability or just lack of customer trust because of an incorrect invoice, like all of those things, the tolerance was not high enough, right? It was too much of a risk. So we built that feature in a way that it's just landing advice in a PM's queue instead of doing something completely by itself.
Kind of what I was thinking when it comes to, again, a person looking at AI and human. AI makes a mistake, and you weight that factor of failure much higher than a human sometimes. So you're like, oh, well, AI made a mistake. I'm never going to trust it again.
Yeah.
You see it with self-driving cars. Like, well, what if it has an accident? Yeah, how many accidents do humans have every day? If an AI has an accident once or twice, it's probably going to happen. But
Yeah.
what's the balance? Like, you got to be, there's the tolerance, like you said. What's the tolerance for, it should be the same. We should be able to accept it as close to the same, at least with some healthy skepticism, like you mentioned.
Yeah, the funny thing we found was that the problem we were solving for these incorrect invoices go out every day is because PMs are just auto approving expense and time submissions
Yeah.
because they have so many, right? You could be think about if you're a PM on 4 projects that each have
Yeah.
a dozen consultants and there's 5 days in a week, like all of a sudden we're in the hundreds of time entries and who knows how many expense entries every week. So
You got that
like
bird like clicking, like that's the white noise clicking. Like you're just like tick, 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 just kicking enter
like,
because you
do
don't
you
care.
invoice out on time, especially if you invoice weekly? Like, as a PM, do you have time to go through 500 different time and expense entries every
Yeah.
week? Maybe not. So, what we found was PMs were actually just hitting accept all, and so clients would reject an invoice and say, "Hey, you billed me for something you shouldn't have," or
Yep.
sometimes they would find out they were billing things as free that they should have actually charged money for. So it's sometimes it's hurting the client and sometimes it's actually hurting your business's ability to capture revenue. So yeah, I thought that was funny because we're being so careful about how we implement this AI feature, but actually we're implementing it because of a human tendency that creates the problem in the first place.
That is funny. Yeah, Bobby, and going back to your point about how people are so much more, I guess, like difficult on AI with like the car driving and stuff like that. And yeah, I feel like honestly, you probably wouldn't want AI to get to a point where it's like so much better than humans, because then that's what people are kind of scared about anyway, where it's like they're thinking, oh, they're going to take over everyone's jobs and stuff like that, which obviously isn't the case as we're chatting here today. So that is an interesting point though, why everyone's like, "Ah, see, this is why we shouldn't trust it and all that stuff." So That
You
is
gotta
Yeah,
push
funny
through.
to
You
me.
gotta push through that little bit of emotional pain, you know,
yeah.
Yeah.
and for the benefit, because it is. I mean, it's strong enhancement. You know, there's no doubt about it, and we just need to keep holding hands with it.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think that's where I think back to my days as an implementation consultant, and like if you've been in ERP, you know that we've had the same exact challenge. You bring a new technology system in, forget AI, to a company, and they go, "Oh my God, my job, like, is it going to go away?" So
100%.
it's sort of funny or ironic because this is not a new conversation, it's just a new tool. And I think the speed with which it's evolving, or like the potential that AI brings, I think is a little bit different than traditional
That
ERP, but
accelerates the fear for sure. The speed at which in the unknown, it's like what? I think definitely your point is valid. It accelerates it.
I remember, like sitting down with a production scheduler who, in their legacy system before they implemented Dynamics, her entire day was she would grab all of the production orders out of their old system, dump it in Excel, color code things, and sequence the orders in the optimal way. And that was like, I don't know if it was her whole day, but it was a lot of her day just figuring out the order that they were going to run production in. And it's like, okay, if that was automated, which you could do with simple rules-based automation in a modern cloud ERP, right? Um, if we could automate that, what then can she do? Could she look at optimizing like the general rules for production scheduling, or could she do like continuous improvement on the production process, go back and actually measure variance analysis on material consumption or production timings, and like what is it that people aren't doing because they have to do these kind of like the drudgery work today? And I think when you look at the capabilities that we've been building and that our customers are building themselves, it is that let's tackle the stuff that people didn't want to do anyway. Like nobody wants to submit expense report, right?
True.
Like, yeah,
Not
and
really.
if I'm a consultant, that's not my expense reports being submitted automatically has nothing to do with whether or not I have a job. It just means that I'm not at at 5 o'clock on Sunday. My husband, he's always like, "Oh no, I didn't get my timesheet in." Sorry, Chris. And
Yeah.
he runs up to his office and he quickly puts in his timesheet, and like we're in the middle of doing whatever as a family, and if an agent's putting his timesheet in for him, he doesn't do that run upstairs once a week. So I think it's a lot of it, like responsible AI isn't just about like businesses. Like the responsibility is also on the builders of the AI capabilities. And when we look at the use cases we pick, it's that, okay, like why are we picking it? What's the value does it add? And is it just, are we making people's lives easier? Are we trying to make a big impact? Like we have responsibility too.
To your point, it's an organization's challenge and responsibility to create an environment that opens up the idea that hey, this is change. It's change management, and you know, and the employee too has to open up their minds that they can't. It's less resistance and almost like immediate, like, cool. If this did, like you to your point, this did take away this rote action I have to do every day that is not really challenging. What can I do to improve the company? Boy, if I just didn't do this, I'm sure most people are thinking that way anyway. Man, if I didn't have all this on my plate, I could be doing this other cool thing, and getting your mind flowing around that. And that could propel you to say, hey, to your organization, can you automate this? Because here's the 10 other things we could be doing that I could be doing that are impactful that that will improve whatever it is, whatever department I'm in.
Yeah, I think HR and billing are going to be some of the most important parts of an organization as you go through an AI journey, because like there are some roles like mine, right? I'm a product marketing manager, and part of my job is just creating content like a demo script or a PowerPoint. And I actually do use Copilot in my day to day, and I was not paid to say this, I'm just telling the truth. I do use it to speed up some of those pieces. But there's other things that I do where, like right now, there's nothing an AI could do to replace what I do. And by using Copilot, it just opens me up to kind of do more of my job or kind of elevate what I can do with that rest of my time. But I think there's also like we have to be aware that there's also people whose entire job is like entering invoices into the AP module. And that person, you're going to have to help them get to the next step,
That's
right?
yeah,
Like you're going to
exactly.
have to figure out where, and maybe step one is monitor the agent or the AP invoice capture that's going on and mitigate the issues, right? And then what's the step after that? And I think that's where like you really need to be looking at your HR department to say, how do we accelerate career paths? Because we're gonna the need to move onwards to something else is going to become more prevalent with agents coming in to help augment work.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely trying to figure out ways to design those frameworks between AI and employees to kind of create that teamwork model rather than yeah, thinking of it as something that is gonna take your job, quote unquote, or whatever. So yeah, and like you were saying earlier, it's definitely a way to reduce those mundane tasks that you're always trying that you always have to do. And yeah, for sure opens up different opportunities for you to kind of enhance what you're doing or kind of think more strategically and things like that. I know I've definitely used that within my job as well. So, yeah, that's always good to see as well. Um, do you have any advice on kind of some people kind of like over rely on AI, maybe like opposite of having that fear factor? Do you kind of have any advice on how to put those controls into place a little bit on that?
I didn't think about
If not, that's totally fine too.
I know for me, and as you're thinking, like as you know, as an IT director, even like pre AI, you should always have structure in place to monitor activity around technology. In my day, it was Excel or Access, Microsoft. I can't tell you how many Microsoft Access databases that were in the wild, rogue at my organization. I would uncover them and say, "Cool, I don't mind." In IT you call skunk works, where people are out there just trying to figure things out and create advancement on their own because they have the desire. It's like I encourage that, but I'd love you to loop me in. I'll let
Yeah.
you run, but loop me in so that if it breaks, if you need help, I'll kind of know where we're going, and then I'll know how to help it integrate. So I think there's so Samantha, from my standpoint, to answer that, part of what you've got to be doing is sort of frame that structure so people understand we're okay with you. We're actually gonna we're gonna bring some people forward to be a part of a group that's going to be testing AI and talking about it and figuring out how it works in our organization. Part of that is the governance of when we do have it and we're ready to implement it, we've got to have some control so that it doesn't go rogue and do something like Anne mentioned, where it's like, hey, we did something, but it wasn't completely vetted out and we didn't realize it was going to touch this bit of data. And all of a sudden it, extrapolated an issue that is very detrimental to the business. So that's the kind of stuff that organizations have to think about on the side, like get people going, but also have that framework going too of how to keep it structured. So you want to balance that breadth of allowing good activity, but with some handle on where it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've sparked a couple things. I think one like this is where I think that any organization who's actually basically every organization would benefit from providing their employees a 101 training on generative AI.
That's a
What is
great
it?
idea.
How does it work? What's an LLM? Because even if you haven't bought licenses to like a commercial grade AI tool, chances are at least one of your employees is working with ChatGPT or some other like model of choice on their personal devices. So I think it's that like, okay, so Gen AI, the way that it writes answers is actually by guessing the right best next word, right? When you're just thinking about like a chat model, right? And of course it consults knowledge sources, but it's not, people need to understand it doesn't think exactly like they do, and how might it get to an answer, and what kind of things do you need to look at, and how do you work with it to get the best out of it? I think just baseline education, even if you haven't bought a commercial grade AI software, like would be beneficial for any organization. And then um, I think this is where what we do with Copilot um, is really valuable. So the M365 Copilot app for business, there's it's got the baked in security. So you have work and then you have web. So when you use the work chat, Copilot is able to access all of your like work content. And it can source from the web and give you kind of a consolidated answer. And then there's things that will only access the web. So you can actually be thoughtful about what sources you consider. And then because security is so ingrained into what we do, for example, if I asked a question in work chat that referenced a document that was marked highly confidential, the response Copilot gives me is actually also tagged highly confidential.
Mm.
So the data sensitivity and like so it doesn't have to be Copilot or Microsoft, although of course I would love it if it was. But as you go to implement a commercial AI solution, looking at how does this connect into our larger security system and how do we prevent people from being able to do something overboard with it that they shouldn't be able to do, I think is really important.
And just to put a double click on your education, that's a great point in demystifying for folks that are still in that zone of like, it's going to take my job, helping them to, that's part of that change management slice as well.
Yeah, it's great for enthusiasts and skeptics.
Yeah, both. Yep.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, yeah, that was a great answer. Thank you, Anne. That is kind of all I had as discussion points here. Bobby, I don't know if you had anything else you want to touch on, or Anne, if there's anything that we didn't chat about today that you wanted to bring up here as well. I'll just kind of open the floor for a little bit, but
Yeah, I think we sort of touched on it lightly, but I think it's worth mentioning that core security, beyond just Dynamics 365, core security has never been more important. Um, like you'll see, I've seen news articles like, oh, somebody was able to use, I don't remember if it was Copilot or another tool, but they were able to use Gen AI to actually read their CEO's inbox. And
Mm.
everybody's like, oh my God. But the reality is, if you had the appropriate permissions and access control in your core security stack, that wouldn't have been possible, right? Like the AI tools that are coming out are being built with, like Microsoft has our SFI, our Secure Future Initiative, where everything we build for AI is pointing towards our security stack and saying a person interacting with AI, the AI should never be able to access information the person doesn't have direct access to. But that does nothing if you don't have a good security setup. And there's a whole stack of things you can consider from Microsoft in terms of security, and I'm sure there are other third-party products out there, but I think there's doing enough with security to pass an audit, and then there's doing enough with security to be an end-to-end kind of an organization that is prepared for AI to come in everywhere. Because I think the plus side of AI is actually you can, if you have access to more data than you knew about, you all of a sudden have a much more rich picture. But the other side of that is over access. So you've got all these benefits coming in, but you need to be fully prepared across your whole stack to kind of control your data and be secure.
Kind of
And I
expect enterprise level companies to be there, but even you find that, some are not. Smaller companies, it's sometimes easier to say, cool, just give Ann access to everything, from a data standpoint. But to your point, Ann, maybe they didn't know how to get to that data. Like they didn't know how to, actually attach to the CEO's mailbox and get access to it. But they had it, but they didn't know how to get to it. But now AI, this new tool, this rich tool, allowed them to, because they didn't have to think about it. It's just there.
Yeah, and there's levels to security. For example, you might have all of your inboxes properly closed down, right? That'd be step one. Great job. But you could be like, so you could be a publicly traded SOX compliant company that passes all of your audits, and there still could be things you're not doing. Like if you have, for example, like a SharePoint site that your HR team uses or your finance team uses, um, and it's just kind of like, oh, like all employees have access to this general SharePoint site. Then if I'm searching for something related to, like, maybe you're an IT admin of the HR system and you're just trying to find information on the products, and then AI might see HR's unprotected SharePoint site and pull in people's salary information or other like sensitive information. Or same thing with, if your finance team is using a SharePoint and that's not locked down. So you can go beyond just kind of like user restriction and access to like sensitivity labeling of files or SharePoint sites. Like, I think it's not just the basics anymore. Even enterprises have opportunities to grow and vulnerabilities that they didn't know about. And I think it just happens, right? I think as companies grow, and I think about other stuff like PII, right? Personally identifiable information. If you are you're in a customer support role, new from some other business, and you come into a big company, you might just say, oh, well, I'm going to email a bunch of customers with a survey that I created myself and ask them to give me information because that'll help me do my job better. If you didn't have a deeply automated process and extensive training that new hire went through, then they might not understand that they are potentially collecting PII and that's not compliant with the policy. And I think even like technology wasn't necessarily up to the point where all of those kind of procedures and policies could be baked into something like a form survey to say, oh, are you collecting PII with this? And did you know your company has a policy and you need to go through it? And I think that the evolution that AI has gone through has almost opened this door where we should start doing this. We should start thinking about this, and maybe AI might be enabling that sort of a thing to watch as people, to just put pokey-yokes in, right? The fail safes that say we can't let you do, you can't even do something that's outside of our policy.
Right.
Versus we can check for it on the back end and shut things down afterwards, which is what a lot of, I think, companies do instead.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see how it affects, data security breaches one way or the other, whether it's in a strong positive way or in a, an unknown negative way, or both. But it'll be interesting to see how it lays on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting things coming out now and in the future. And yeah, it'll be cool to see
Every
how
time
all
we get
this...
together, it's new.
Yeah, it really does.
Talk to me in a week, it'll be different.
Yeah.
We just need to have you on every week, and then everyone can stay up to date.
It is like a fireside AI chat weekly now. It's got to be where it's going to be. It's like
if I
every
can
Monday morning.
download into an AI avatar and then give that to you, would that work?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the next thing.
AI and.
So, yes. Goodness. Well, Anne, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge on AI and everything. It was very interesting listening to you and learning and everything like that. And yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time and chatting with us today. So it was a lot of fun. So
having me.
Yeah, of course. Looking forward to seeing you soon, and hearing more about AI tomorrow.
Alrighty, thanks guys. See ya.
Take care.